welcome to another episode of Cemeteries Down Under. Now I'm here with a very important person today, Michael Pellegrino. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for your work.
He's a historian and he's been studying stories on the people here in this cemetery, and he's going to show us around today and tell us about the people that are buried here, some of them. I'm sure we can't get to everyone because it's quite a decent sized cemetery. And also we'll have a look around the church and hopefully a look inside later if we can. And then we're going to meet the Cemetery Trust. We've got a very important message to tell you at the end of the video, so follow us and we'll show you around. Hope you enjoy the episode.
Stay tuned, guys.
Thanks, guys. That was awesome. What you can see here is dedication to Bishop Stone-Wigg. He was the first bishop of New Guinea. A Burwood local, Bishop Stone-Wigg was originally from London. This lich gate is one of the very last lich gates standing here, and it was built once again in the English tradition. The monument is not only a dedication to the works of Bishop Stone-Wigg, but also a celebration of Bishop Stone-Wigg's life. He lived in the now iconic Arpian Way in Burwood. He's remembered for establishing 2 children's homes, which are still in operation today as family centres, being the Weldon Street Family Centre, which is in Weldon Street in Burwood, and the Wyatt Young Boys Home. The Weldon Lodge is still standing today. He's also remembered for his progressive attitude and humanitarian attitude towards the people of New Guinea. He also published a book in honour of them and in awe of them, and is fondly remembered in Papua New Guinea as well. The building that you can see here was originally built as the Adelaide Park Free School. It was the first free school in the area, and it was built in 1846 at a time where education wasn't mandated for youngsters across the area and most parts of New South Wales. It was built by convict Thomas Heinz, and it was named Adelaide Park in honour of his young daughter Adelaide. The building, as you can see it now, was reconstructed in 1924, but it was instrumental in not only providing kids with a religious education, but with a more holistic education as well. And for a lot of them, it was their first stepping stone towards the rest of their lives. The tombstone that you're looking at is that of convict Thomas Heinz. Thomas Heinz came to Sydney in 1803, a young Londoner, as a convict, with his wife Charlotte, who was also a convict there. And I think if you were to look inside the church, the stone that's dedicated to Thomas Heinz simply says by his wife Charlotte, "If you seek his memorial, just look around." And you know, by looking at the grandeur of this place, it's definitely a memorial to Thomas Heinz. Now, a merchant businessman himself, and Thomas Heinz originally was granted this estate by Governor Macquarie, and he did use it as a timber mill. He was also a close associate of his neighbour and fellow Sydney businessman Simeon Lord. And the success of this timber mill allowed Thomas Heinz to essentially build timber mills around Sydney, and the timber that was originally here, from the trees that were originally here, what he was able to do was essentially send that timber through for that to be used in the building of St Mary's Cathedral. So when you enter in St Mary's Cathedral today and you look at around the architrave and the timber design there, a lot of that has been sourced right here from Thomas Heinz' original grant of land. Not only did he build the Adelaide Park Free School, which was the first building on this land here as well, the church that is essentially behind us, he's built it as well for his community as a place of worship and a place of parish. And it was built in the old English style to remind travellers when Enfield back itself was a rural community of their churches back home in England. The memorial that you're looking at here is that of Richard Wynne. Richard Wynne was a slate merchant. He was from Ireland originally, migrated to Australia, and was a slate merchant in Burwood. He was the first mayor of Burwood, being instated in 1874, and was known for his benevolent nature and his community-spirited attitudes to the development of Burwood and broader Sydney itself. Now, if you've heard of the Wynne Art Prize, which is a New South Wales art institution, it was actually developed by Richard Wynne. Richard Wynne himself, after passing away in 1895, had left in his will that he wanted an art prize named after him, and essentially funded that art prize out of his will for the beautification of, and essentially capturing the beauty of the New South Wales landscape. It's been reoccurring since 1897, making it one of Australia's oldest art institutions, and it is essentially a reminder of the absolute awe that migrants from way back when had of this place, and the beauty and the unique nature that Australia has to offer. Richard Wynne did have a rather sad life himself. Not only did he lose his wife untimely, but he also lost a few children on a family trip to Italy. All of these family are resting here at St Thomas's Enfield, with his vault being largely untouched. His mansion Winstay is behind the name of the adjacent street next to St Thomas's, where his original mansion was, and an estate named Winstay in the Blue Mountains, which is still standing, is named after Richard Wynne when he rebuilt his mansion in the Blue Mountains. So the memorial that you can see here is that of the Dodds family, and the Dodds family were quite a prominent family here in the Enfield area. The most remarkable monument that I found, and essentially being a relic from the past, was that down the bottom of Stan J. Dodds, who died quite young, passed quite young. It's dedicated to him from the St Thomas Institute. Now, the St Thomas Institute was a relic from older days where church themselves had associations for younger people and for the community in general there. So associations from physical education, public speaking, bodybuilding, choirs, and essentially community-based organisations that were centred around the church. The St Thomas Institute itself was a bodybuilding institute which was quite popular with young men. At the time, they did train inside the Adelaide Park Free School, which is now being used as a hall, as it was being used at the outbreak there of World War I. Many of the young folk who enlisted from Enfield were from the St. Thomas Institute and knew each other from their physical education classes there. It's a relic of a time where entire pubs of men would enrol together to serve for their country at the outbreak of war. And in a similar tradition, in a community-based tradition, many of the members of the St. Thomas Institute, who are now memorialised within the church for their service to this country, did meet here at St. Thomas's and serve for their country, first meeting at the St. Thomas Institute. The grave that you're looking at is in memorial of Henry Otto Zink, Otto Zink, and Freda Louise Zink. Resting here are both parents Otto Zink and Freda Louise Zink. The story is quite a remarkable story, and it's in relation to the sacrifice that a young kid of German descent had made for his country when World War I had broken out. Harry, as he was known by his mates, born as Henry Otto Zink, was quite a young lad when World War I broke out. He would have been aged around 15 years old, and he was the only son of Louise and Otto Zink. Otto Zink was born in Germany, in Gotha in Germany, came to Australia, originally settled in Adelaide and then moved to Burwood. He was widely respected by the community as a talented carpenter, working on many of the houses in Burwood at the time, as well as the buildings, and in Burwood and the surrounding areas there as well. At the outbreak of war, Harry was an apprentice carpenter under his father and was seeking a sense of adventure and was seeking a lifestyle change. Growing up at the turn of the century with quite strict parents, Harry did run away from home after stealing a sum of what would today be equal to $800 from his father and running off. Now, at the time that he had run off, his father had put an ad in the paper essentially reporting to the police that Harry was a wanted man. He had described his son and essentially was after him not only for the funds that he had stole, but for the clothes that he was carrying there as well, and had given a description. The advertisement itself actually says that, you know, there was a chance that he had run through the country. The only person that had known where Harry's whereabouts were, what Harry was looking to do, was his sister. But his parents didn't know anything for 3 years. It turns out that Harry had enlisted in Liverpool to serve for Australia. Born Henry Otto Zink, Harry had served for Australia and fought for Australia under the alias of Frank Raynor. Now, this likely could have been done to not only disguise his German ancestry, given that there was a lot of negative German sentiment there at the time, but was also done to sort of disguise his own identity to avoid his parents from finding him. He had served bravely as a driver in World War I and was commended as being an excellent sniper by the mates that he served alongside with. The first memorial the first kind of notice that his parents received, that his mother received, that Harry was fighting overseas in France, was a medical report back home to essentially outline that Harry himself had been shot in the wrist. Now, this wasn't a fatal incident, but it was the first confirmation of the whereabouts that they had heard from their son. Keep in mind, this was a kid that had enlisted at the age of 16 years old. 16 years old, on the other side of the world, fighting for a country that was fighting against Germany, changing his name so he could fight for Australia. I mean, if that isn't a reflection of patriotism, I don't know what is. But that was Harry's story. Being absolutely shocked by this, and being heartbroken by this, Harry's father, Otto, unfortunately had suffered a heart attack the following year, in 1918 to 1919, and had passed away from that heart attack there. Louise was left with her younger daughter back at home, waiting to hear news, which came very slowly back then, on the fate of her son, Harry. Unfortunately, Harry had been killed by a sniper 3 days before his 20th birthday, his final resting place being in France, and he was remembered, like I mentioned, not only as a great soldier and a patriot, but also as a great sniper, by those who he shared the trenches with, and remembered quite fondly there. The ironic part is, the bitterly ironic part is that Harry was definitely killed by a German sniper, and when you think about a first generation German migrant changing their name to fight for this country out of, a sense of adventure, but not only that, the love of their community as well, it's quite bitterly ironic that Harry himself met his demise at the hands of German artillery. And unfortunately, whilst the family fondly remembers Harry and their great uncle Harry, and his memory does still live on, that was essentially the end of the line for the name Zink. And it's quite... the finality of it can be quite daunting when you do think about it. So, Harry, you are definitely not forgotten. You are definitely loved. And this memorial here for you there not only serves as a reminder of your courage and bravery, but it also serves as a reminder of just how damning war can be. Perhaps the most recognisable headstone here at St Thomas's Enfield is that of Octavius Beale. If you've ever grown up seeing a Beale's piano, or hearing from a Beale's piano rather, you can thank this man right here. Octavius Beale was an Irish-born immigrant. He was an Irish-born Australian, a piano manufacturer and a philanthropist. He formed a company to import sewing machines and pianos in 1879, after which he established Australia's first piano factory in Annandale, 1893. The steel that you can see here was from his piano factory in Annandale, which only ceased production in 1975. He was an organiser of independent Conservative members of Parliament. He wrote particularly one book which did receive a lot of press at the time, and it was quite influential at the time there as well, and will go on to be known as a stern yet successful businessman. The factory itself ceased production in 1975. Beale himself was killed in a car accident in Stroud on the 16th of December 1930. He was accidentally killed there when his driver had hit a lorry, and his body was brought from Stroud all the way here to Sydney. It's a bit of a reminder of, you know, how far things have come since then in terms of, you know, not only the way that our health system is and the way that what we do to sort of, by way of medical resources, the availability that we have, but he loved this place so much that he was actually transported, his body was transported back here, and this is his final resting place. St Thomas Enfield is also a commemorative resting place of Captain Harry Andrew Hampden Garner, a largely unsung Australian hero. Born in Burwood, New South Wales, on the 13th of May 1919, Harry Garner was the son of Henry and Florence Mary Garner. He attended the local school before working as a clerk. Harry came from a proud military family. His father Henry had served in the British and Australian armies, and his brother Edward and sister Florence both served in the Second World War. Edward was a captain in the 7th Division, and Florence was a sergeant in the Australian Women's Army Service, both surviving the conflict. In 1940, Harry enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force and was posted to the 8th Division Australian Army Service Corps. During training, he rose quickly through the ranks and was promoted to lieutenant. In February 1941, he embarked in Sydney for overseas service aboard the famous ocean liner, the Queen Mary, which had been converted to a troop ship. The Queen Mary arrived in Singapore with the 1st Detachment of the 8th Division, which would form part of the British and Commonwealth garrison forces assembled at Malaya. The Japanese invasion of Malaya began just after midnight on the 8th of December 1941, and from mid-January 1942, the units of the 8th Division were involved in fierce fighting on the Malayan Peninsula. On 11th February, Harry was killed in action. He was almost one of 1,800 Australian kills during the month-long campaign in Malaya and Singapore, and one of almost 900 killed in just 1 week of fighting on the island. Anecdotal reports from survivors of the Australian Army Service Corps report that Garner was called to take out a patrol, despite being a logistics officer and not well trained in fighting. When his patrol encountered the Japanese, Garner was told his patrol to retreat. However, he was captured, and members of the patrol believe he was beheaded. He was 22 years old. Posthumously promoted to captain, Garner's body was never recovered, and today his name is listed upon the Kranji War Memorial just north of the city of Singapore. He is also remembered here.
Amen.
St. Thomas Enfield was also largely a tribute to the Lee family and their contributions to this country, not only from parliamentary service but from service within the world wars, and particularly World War One. The tombstone that you see here today is that of Gordon Scott Lee, who had passed away at the age of 27 years on the 1st of September 1920. He is remembered for his 4.5 years war service. Gordon Scott Lee had passed away by taking his own life near his childhood home in Burwood Park. Having died at the age that I am now, it's unfathomable to even come to terms with what this young patriot would have gone through as a result of personal tragedy and the horrors of war. Gordon was the son of William Lee, who was the grandchild of William Lee, the patriarch of the family, and William Lee of Kelso. The family still does own their original colonial grant of land in Larris Lake, which they still use to this day in their bull farm business there. A pioneering family in every sense, his grandfather William Lee Sr. was the first to transport sheep over the Blue Mountains, and along with 12 other men, built the first road over the Blue Mountains. Gordon's father William and Aunt Mary Jane, Great Aunt Mary Jane, were early and prominent pioneering families who developed Enfield as we know it today. They've got street names after them. Kelso Street in Burwood Heights is named after Kelso, where the Lee family originated. After returning from the war, Gordon had lost his mother in 1925. His brother Gerald himself was killed in action in France, and he had tragically lost his younger sister Gladys Hope in that period as well. His despair seemingly mounted to his untimely demise in Burwood Park, where he was found with a soldier's manual at his time of passing. The tragedy that this young patriot went through will never be forgotten, and we cannot be further grateful for not only his strength but his family's strength in honouring his legacy through their achievements. May we never forget their sacrifice. The two headstones that you can see here are of Frederick Trollope and his son. Frederick Trollope is actually the son of Anthony Trollope, and Fred Trollope moved out here at quite a young age, and coincidentally was a friend of Charles Dickens' son. So it's incredible sort of how fate has its way of retwining families from time to time. But Frederick came out here, Fred as he was known, came out here as a farmer and as a grazer. Didn't have too much luck in that. And his father had actually wrote a book about his experience in Australia when he came to visit his son. The farming business unfortunately wasn't that successful, and Fred had later moved out of the country back towards suburbia here in Sydney. He's resting here at St. Thomas at Enfield.
Sorry, mate.
So the grave that you can see here is that of Arthur Yates. If you're listening to this from the garden at the moment, if you're doing some gardening or intending to, you probably could find packets of Yates seeds in the garage or in your shed. Arthur Yates was a seedsman, quite a prominent businessman from the Burwood area, whose company Yates Seeds, which is now owned by Dulux, is still a thriving, iconic Australian brand to this day. His family is also buried in various parts here at St Thomas's, but here he is resting with his wife Carolyn Mary and his daughters Vera and Maud. Thank you, Mr. Yates. Arguably Australia's first media mogul, Edward Smith Hall is resting here at St Thomas Enfield. Hall was one of Australia's first and most vigorous fighters for press freedom and social justice. He published Sydney's third newspaper, The Monitor, in 1826, and as editor for the next 14 years, campaigned for trial by jury and a popularly elected legislature, while fighting the oppression of convicts, public immorality by public officers, and the conduct of Governor Darling himself. Hall was the first Australian to be jailed for criminal libel, and Darling tried to impose licensing of newspapers to silence him and other critics. Darling later blamed Hall for his recall to London after Hall petitioned decision makers in Britain. In 1813, Hall founded the Benevolent Society of New South Wales, later to be renamed the Benevolent Society, which is still in business today. He was an opening speaker at a meeting on 5th of December 1816 for the establishment of the bank. Here he is resting at St Thomas Enfield. The headstone that you can see here is of NX71656, Private James Malloy, No. 1 Company, Australian Army Service Corps. He was one of over 1,800 Allied prisoners held in the Sandakan prisoner of war camp in North Borneo, having been transferred there from Singapore as part of B Force. Originally from Campsie, James had grown up in the Enfield area. The 1,494 prisoners of war that made up B Force were transported from Changi on 7th July 1942 on board the tramp ship Ubi Maru, arriving in Sandakan Harbour on the 18th July 1942. Private Malloy, aged 41, died as a prisoner of the Japanese on the 3rd of May 1945. He had died at a time when the Allies were advancing, and as a result of this, the Japanese had forced the prisoners of war to march 260 kilometres, many of them starving to death and perishing along the way as a result of the cruel treatment. He was the son of James Patrick and Ella Malloy, and the husband of Emma Irene Malloy of Campsie.
May we never forget their sacrifice.
So this one you'll see that his surname's Foye, and in our last video we did Old Southhead Cemetery, and here is one of the descendants of the Foye family, and it's in memory of our dear husband Reuben Victor Foye, who departed this life 6th of August 1917, aged only 38. God is love, beloved son of William and Harriet Foye. Now the Foyes are also relatives of Juanita Nelson, the mystery case that we did in our last video that is still an open case today. And here you see Harriet, wife of William Foye, who departed this life the 29th of March 1910, aged 65. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. And down here we got Lillian, wife of J.H. Robertson, eldest daughter of above, died the 27th of April 1918, aged 47. Now you also remember in the last cemetery one that we did, we had Lady Robertson and Lord Robertson, who were the earlier premier, with the unusual bell-shaped grave, and she is also a relative of that family. So a lot of the families here in early Sydney are intertwined. So in this beautiful headstone here we've got the lovely angels with their wings outspread, and it's in loving memory of Robin Bruce. Died the 17th of October 1880, I think it's 3. Aged
82, I think it is.
82. Aged 16 months. Also Nellie died the 5th of November
1802.
1802, aged 2 months. And it says here, children, in loving children of John and Ruth Bruce, and I can't really read that one, but it says William Thomas, second son, 10th of July 1909, I think it is. And then it has John Bruce, died the 19th, 13, and then Ruth Bruce. But I just love tombstones. Some of the words are hard to read now, but how beautiful is that? And this beautiful grave, even with its original fence here, this is in loving memory of Maria Elena de la Cruz, and it's the dearly beloved wife of Alexander Nesbitt, who died Enfield, New South Wales, 20th of September 1882, aged 37. She's just got this gorgeous cross with the wreath and the Bible, and it's a little bit faded now, but you could probably see a couple of doves around. It's just beautiful. So this beautiful cross with all its designs, and they've obviously redone the plaques so you can read them, and it says, to the glory of God and the dear memory of our mother Elizabeth MacDonald Rossiter, who passed to her rest the 1st of April 1909, aged 79 years. I thank my God upon every remembrance of you. Erected by her children and grandchildren, also her daughter Emily Blanche, 1922. And it says Consolationis Filia, which I believe is Latin. If anyone knows what that means, put it in the comments. And on the side I noticed there was another plaque. And it says, we leave her here, still loftier than the world suspects, living and dying, also great-granddaughter of Emily Elizabeth Burgoyne Hudson, 1915 to 2010. It's such a beautiful tombstone. This beautiful monument here that says, in loving memory of James Samuel, beloved husband of Annie Hughes, born the 4th of August, I believe it's 1846, died the 5th of May 1910. The face we loved is lying low, the fond true heart is still, the hand we often clasped in ours lies now in death's cold chill, erected by his loving wife and son William. At rest, Annie Hughes, dearly loved wife of the above, and our dear mother, who passed away the 15th of October 1934, aged 85 years. Louise, a wife of A.W. Robinson, and our dear mother, loving daughter of the above, who passed away the 19th of March 1932, aged 54 years. Would have been a very grand monument in its day. The tiles are a bit faded now, but you can still see the beautiful urn and the beautiful design on the headstone there. It's just gorgeous. So this says, in loving memory of our dear mother and dear brother Mary Ann Cronit and Charles George Cronit. And Mary died the 13th of May 1941, aged 63 years. Charles died the 6th of January 1911, aged 18 months. Rest in peace. Now, I did do a story on the Cronits in our St. Peter's Anglican Cemetery in Richmond, and that was a very sad story indeed. So these guys are the relatives of that story. So if you want to have a look and hear their story, I've even put a photo of one of the family members. Please go to that episode and have a look, because it was a very good story, very sad story. again, beautiful carving. And this church was built in 1840, and it's still used today. It's the oldest church to be used today in Sydney City, and the schoolhouse is currently being used for services while this is being renovated. But in case you didn't know, the reason why they used to carve all these faces and gargoyles and things on the front of the church, and that is to scare off any potential evil and keep the building sacred. Because that's a bit of trivia I thought you might like to know.
Hey guys.
Hi, hope you enjoyed this episode of Cemeteries Down Under and enjoyed the beautiful cemetery and stories of St Thomas. Now, one of the reasons why Michael, our historian, contacted us today, and this is Paul from Cemeteries Trust and his beautiful daughter Sienna. She's a bit shy, guys, but they need our help and we want to try and help them. As you can see, some of the graves are a bit unloved looking, the path's a bit worn. They've started, just the two of them, been weeding graves and trying to make it a bit more lovable. But we want to preserve Sydney's history, and we can start in this cemetery. And so we're going to start a fundraising GoFundMe page. Now, we don't see the money, we don't even know who's donating. It'll be going to this cemetery, and this is where they're going to tell their part of it.
Yeah.
Of what you can do with the donations.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, look, this is a beautiful historical cemetery here in the heart of Enfield. It's sealed off from the local community, and unfortunately, due to lack of funding and resources, it's had to be maintained by just killing weeds and leaving it in a desolate, derelict state. With the funds that we can raise, we can restore paths, restore monuments, and we can start to beautify the plots. We can establish gardens and bring in the wildlife, the birds. There are blue-tongued lizards around here, and enhance this as a quiet, contemplative community place. I came up here as a local resident, just helping out with the weeding. That's where I met Michael, who is such a keen historian, and along with the members of this local parish, we've already been able to do a lot, but we're seriously limited by our lack of funds in order to be able to preserve it. And I would hate to see it just continue to disintegrate and be lost to the community.
Same. And I know we've only got a little channel to start with, so we will be reaching out to the local papers, also other social media stations for people to help us. And we're not asking for a lot. I mean, if we could get, say, 5,000 people to donate as little as $2, it's gonna make a huge difference to help these guys. And like I said, the money's not coming to us.
Nope.
I don't want a cent of it. I will be showing photos though. They will be keeping in contact with me and showing photos, and also we'll be doing part 2 when we're coming back in a few months, and we can show you the progress that's been made thanks to everybody that's donated. Yep. So hopefully you guys can help us. We're just reaching out in desperation because it's such a beautiful cemetery. The stories here, and it's Sydney's history, it's Australia's history, and I want to be able to have this here for my children, my grandchildren, their children, other people's families. We don't want to see it crumble and go to waste, and certainly the people that are resting here, I want to give them that respect also, that their stories aren't going to be forgotten.
So there will be a link.
A bit emotional.
Yep. So there will be a link down there, guys. Just click on it. As I say, $1 to $2 if you like. Any helps these guys, and we want to observe this history. So we'll see what
people like my granddaughter Sienna.
Yep.
Yep.
We'll have the link under the video, and thank you so much for watching our channel and supporting us.
Thanks, folks.
And thank you to these men inviting us here today. So.
Okay, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. See you soon. This is what they're doing. You know, trying to make it all look good now. So let's see, can we get all these done too? This is what they want to fix up. You know, fix all this up. They've got bushes down here they need help with. So yeah, a lot of mess over there, and they just need help. So if we can help there, guys, please.